Powered by the Montana Television Network. This is the 5:30 News on Q2, Montana's news leader.
Good evening and thanks for joining us tonight. I'm Russ Riesinger. Janelle's on assignment. As the Billings City government works to finalize next year's budget, we're getting a better look at how $3 million in cuts could affect city services. Billings public pools are on the chopping block, and the senior center may have to close its doors on July 1st if other shifts aren't made to the city budget. Well, no final decisions have been made on the specifics of the cuts. The City Council will hear the recommendation from the Parks Board on Monday, hoping to avoid some of those closures. Q2's Mitch Leahy joins us now with more.
As the Billings City Council looks to bring a public safety mill levy to Billings voters that would hope to bring in $4 million, the City Council has also asked its staff to cut $3 million from the budget. Some facilities that are possibly on the chopping block include South Park and Rose Park pools. Of the $3 million in proposed cuts, half would come from the Billings Parks and Recreation budget. The other half would be cuts from the Billings Police and Fire departments. If the City Council were to adopt the cuts, a slew of park services and jobs may be gone, including the closure of the Billings Senior Center, which saw about 19,000 visitors last year. 5 full-time and 109 part-time positions are proposed to be cut, some of them dedicated to maintaining the city parks. Without those staff members, all bathrooms in the parks will close and trash pickup will cease, along with a reduction in other services. On Monday, the City Council will hear a recommendation made by the Parks Board today. The board moved to request the council to shift money from the general fund into Parks District 1 to hopefully cover the cuts. In Billings, Mitch Leahy, MTN News.
All right, thank you, Mitch. The City Council is scheduled to approve the 2021 budget on July 1st. That's the day that you'd see those closures if the cuts end up being adopted. Well, authorities have identified a 23-year-old suspected drunk driver who crashed through a blocked-off road in the Billings Heights last night and dragged a firefighter close to 100 yards. Rindle crashed through the cones after the fire department put them up so a power company could work on a transformer. According to court documents, a firefighter reached in for the keys and Rindle took off, dragging the firefighter 25 to 30 feet. Rindle was arrested and faces charges of DUI and criminal endangerment. Officers say they found a bottle of liquor and a tall can of beer in the car. Rindle had a blood alcohol content of 0.161. That's 2 times the legal limit. The firefighter was treated for an injured toe at the scene. And we're learning more tonight about a Tuesday incident that left 2 people dead in northwest Montana. The Flathead County Sheriff says deputies responded to a home in West Kalispell for a report of an assault. When arriving, deputies found the victim, identified as 62-year-old Maxine Heil of Kalispell. She'd been shot and killed. An investigation provided information about a male suspect in a vehicle that left the scene. The sheriff says a deputy spotted that vehicle Tuesday afternoon, but the suspect, identified as 59-year-old Richard Mason of Kalispell, refused to pull over and a chase began. Stop sticks brought the suspect to a stop. That's when the sheriff says Mason fired shots at a deputy and was killed when the deputy and a Montana Highway Patrol trooper returned fire. The Montana Division of Criminal Investigations is in charge of investigating the officer-involved shooting. Well, tribal nations in Montana continue to aggressively test members for COVID-19. The Northern Cheyenne Reservation in southeast Montana is also keeping a stay-at-home order in place until June 19th. Today, the tribe continued drive-through testing for anyone to get screened, including those without symptoms. Governor Steve Bullock was there to talk to tribal leaders about the pandemic in Montana and the tribe's effort to keep people safe.
Already ran over 800 tests by 1 o'clock, so we're going to get well over 1,000. And what we're really trying to do is make sure that people both with any sort of symptoms or asymptomatic, without symptoms, get out and get tested, because the sooner that we can find positives, and the sooner that we can get our hands around it, that's what will keep from community spread and clusters.
7 of the 8 reservations in Montana have conducted surveillance testing. State health authorities report 8 new confirmed COVID-19 cases across the state, 2 of them in people under the age of 9. The girl and boy are from Gallatin County, along with 4 other positives today. The other 2 are from Bighorn County. The total of confirmed active cases now at 56. 7 people are hospitalized. In Wyoming, state health officials are now reporting another death from COVID-19. That brings the state total to 18, the same number of deaths here in Montana. A Fremont County woman with pre-existing conditions is the latest to pass away. We've also learned that one of Montana's deaths from last month has been linked to the nursing home outbreak in Worland. According to the Wyoming Department of Health, the older woman was a Montana resident, and there's no word on how she contracted the virus from the nursing home. Well, today, Wyoming Governor Mark Gordon announced more COVID-19 restrictions will be lifted starting on June 15th. The indoor gathering now includes groups of 250 people with restrictions. Parades with a permit can continue, and all educational institutions are free to open and resume in-person instruction. Well, the Alberta Bear Theater will delay the opening of its new season indefinitely, all due to COVID-19. Crews are working to renovate the theater, and it was originally scheduled to reopen in September. Theater management says reopening guidelines along with health safety led to that decision. Social distancing with reduced capacity also made reopening not attainable. The theater's program director is working to get events rescheduled, and an announcement will be made as soon as possible, they say. Well, when Congress approved a massive coronavirus stimulus bill in late March, it included $1.25 billion for Montana for coronavirus-related expenses and impacts. Now, 2.5 months later, only 2% of that money has gone out the door. MTN's Mike Dennison tells us what the Bullock administration has been doing or not doing to allocate this money.
Governor Steve Bullock appointed a task force to recommend how to spend this money. And after it issued a report May 1st, the administration lined out a dozen programs, including grants to businesses to help them survive and money for people who can't pay their rent or mortgages. But as of this week, only $25 million of the $1.25 billion in federal funding has been approved for disbursement. The biggest chunk is $10.6 million in stabilization grants for small businesses, distributed to about 1,600 companies across the state, employing up to 50 people each. Another $5 million has gone to nonprofit organizations, $4 million to local public health departments, and $1.6 million to Montana food banks. The state also has approved $1.5 million in emergency housing assistance, although not all that money is out the door. But more than 9,500 applications for grants are still pending, including 6,500 from small businesses seeking stabilization aid and almost 1,000 from people needing emergency housing assistance. Republican legislative leaders and members of the business community are among those saying, what's the holdup?
I think there's growing frustration with the slow pace of that. It doesn't do any good to sit in a bank account up in Helena. I think it'd be a lot better to push that out in the prescribed manner that the governor's task force has laid out for him.
Griffin also says that restaurants and others in the hospitality industry who've been hit particularly hard by shutdowns believe much more money from the $1.25 billion pot could be made available for them. Republican State Representative Lou Jones, a Conrad business owner who sat on the governor's task force, agrees. He and others also say the money should be leveraged to create more relief, such as a commercial loan interest deferral program that would enable banks to pitch in as well. And Republican House Speaker Greg Hertz of Polson says a large amount of money should be made available to local governments who know best where it's needed. The Bullock administration says it's waiting for local governments to submit requests for COVID-19 costs this week and in July. The governor also said last week that another option for business aid, similar to the loan deferral program mentioned by Jones and others, will be rolled out soon. As for the pace of the distribution of funds, the administration says it wants to be a careful steward of public money and make sure those who are getting it are eligible. Many businesses, however, say the clock is ticking on their financial future. At the Capitol, Mike Dennison, MTN News.
Well, so far, the Bullock administration also has allotted only $170 million of total funds for specific aid programs. Well, there is still some time to listen in on the Montana VA Healthcare System's Town Hall event. They are inviting veterans to bring their questions. That event started minutes ago. It runs until 6:30 tonight. Veterans can participate by calling 866-478-3358. VA leaders say they're holding the event as an alternative way to engage with the veterans they serve. They'll begin by talking about the precautions they've been taking to protect health during the COVID-19 emergency, but they say the most important part will be hearing directly from veterans about their experiences with the healthcare system.
I want to hear from them from maybe the worst case scenarios all the way up to the best case scenarios. I want to hear from every veteran that may be having some barriers, because our goal is to remove those barriers at all costs.
And leaders say the veterans can call in at any time during the event. Still ahead on tonight's 5:30 News, if you're a recent college graduate or know of one who is struggling to find a job, some important advice from career advisors. And later, Scott will fill us in on fall sports plans for Grizz football.
And coming up in weather, our weather has been and will be stuck on nice for a few more days. But how long will it last? We'll have the answer coming up in just a few more minutes.
You're watching MTN News with Janelle Slade and Russ Riesinger. Storm Tracker weather with Bob McGuire. And sports with Scott Green. This is the 5:30 News on Q2, Montana's news leader.